This is our new business item.
Okay. This microphone, and you're gonna have that one.
Did you sign your whole one check, Stuart? You owe Vicky like a lot, 'cause
She's covering for me.
she covered for you, man.
Can't think of anybody better.
She signed away all our money while you were gone.
Well, I didn't even try to sneak in any extra. I wanted to.
I heard she was good at that, spending money.
It's 7:30. We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to stand and say the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, hopefully you've all read the consent agenda. If so, do I hear a motion to approve?
I so move.
It's been moved,
I'll second. Go ahead.
seconded by Janet. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comments. We have a visitor in the crowd. Derek, would you like to say?
No, I'm just here to listen and try to find out more about what's going on in economic development in the community.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay, update from Lonnie Duvall, President.
Good morning.
Morning.
So not a lot of action on commercial and industrial prospects. We've had some challenges with, as we've talked about before. We kind of started the year with got a lot of enthusiasm and excitement when we, which always happens when we have a change in the federal administration. And then we had interest rate issues, and then we had tariff issues, and now we have political unrest. And so those things all weigh in on people who are making decisions about business expansions, business relocations, those kinds of things. So not surprising, just one of the things we deal with. We do have a lot of momentum on the things we can control. So the projects that we've already gotten to a certain point, we're able to really focus on those right now. So the team has been largely focused on some large commercial projects and some housing projects that are far enough along that we feel like the commitment's already there. Now we just need to foster it and bring it along to the level that it's ready to go. So it's a positive to have. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Ron.
It's a positive to have the lull, if you will, in new outreach because it does allow us some time to focus on some of the projects that really needed some direct focus. So. The Amazon warehouse is well underway. If you haven't been out by there, you can go out and take a look at that. We have had our board member from the community college, Mr. Rupp, had reached out. Also, this Mr. Rupp, Lance, had reached out asking about the Quick Shop building at campus and Kansas. People saw bulldozers and everything at work over there. They did remove the fuel tanks, the underground fuel tanks. There is no immediate use, and just recently they did put up the for lease sign. But I think, their intent, as I told both of the Misters Rupp, their intent, I think, was just to white box that building and get it ready to be whatever the future holds for it. So. The K-State Garden City Community College project is moving forward, and we've had some really good conversations about how we get specifically folks who are already in the agricultural workforce but need a bachelor's level degree in order to advance or in order to maintain their positions. So one of the things that we're most excited about is that K-State is really focusing on bachelor's in applied sciences, which is an abbreviated bachelor's degree program that's really, again, very valuable for those who are already engaged in the workforce, those non-traditional students who just need the degree in order to continue advancing. So we're excited about that. It has fewer credit hour requirements, so it's an opportunity for us to get a lot more people into diplomas, four-year degree diplomas. So we're very excited about that. And then we also had some conversations with Higher Paths, which is a group that's been doing, last year they did their first 2 events. They did Manhattan and Hayes, and they focus on middle school students. So they have 12 different career pathways that they can offer during these half-day sessions, basically. And they've created those career paths based on the jobs of the future, quote unquote, for Kansans. So think agriculture and education and, all the different careers that we know are going to be important going into the future. And then they do very similar to what the Western Kansas Career Showcase has been doing with high school students. They're doing that with middle school students. So you bring in companies and employers and folks who are in those career pathways to really dive in with the students and say, hey, here's what it's like to do this job. And if you're interested in this job, these are the things you need to do to prepare to do this job. So when they reached out to our community as one of their expansion areas, my first reaction was, yes, but we're absolutely open to it. But what we don't want to do is duplicate services or create even the impression that we're duplicating. So it was really important to me that we engage the Western Kansas Career Showcase group to be a part of the event. We don't want, both factions going to employers, because obviously they're going to be going to the same employers. So we wanted the both of those groups actively engaged in it, and then when we go to employers, we can say, you're going to get 2 opportunities. You're going to get an opportunity at the younger set of students, which is really valuable for some of the career paths. We talk a lot about, if a student decides as a junior in high school that they want to go into medicine, for instance, they're already behind. They're already set back from a student who decided in 7th grade that they were going to go into medicine, because there are classes that you take, there are things that you focus on when you're going to try to get into a competitive degree program in a competitive field that you have to be focused on much sooner than as a junior in high school, right? So I think it's a great opportunity to go kind of from 2 different directions. But I felt it was important that we work together with those entities to take it forward. The good news is we had that discussion and everybody agreed that it was something we want to do. So the good news is we're going to do it. The bad news is we're kind of limited in the number of students that we can have in for a half-day event like that. So we've even considered that we may do one that's focused on Garden City centric and another that's focused on the entire region, allowing more middle schoolers that opportunity to come in. So we'll see how it goes. It will take a pretty heavy lift because it does require that we do the work. The Higher Path side really just provides kind of the resources and the framework, but the local community has to step up and do the heavy lift.
Would this happen during the summer months or
No,
fall?
during the school year, yeah. They did the other ones, I want to say January is what they had decided. And then you run into the what day of the week do you do, and you have all the things that come up when you're working with the schools. But we'll start the conversations with the school district, and they can bring us ideas about, it'll be best to do it in this month and for middle school on this day, and where to have it, and how do we get students to it, and all the things.
So do students volunteer to go to this, or are everybody's required, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the way they did them in Manhattan and Hayes, they made it, all, I believe they did 7th graders. I think they did 7th graders. And yeah, they all get the opportunity to go, and then they go and they actually have an app that they use that they send to all of the students, and the students select their top 3 that they would like to go to. But obviously, some may have a lot of interest, but we can't put 300 kids in the construction trades room, right? So then they have a model that, honestly, one of the very biggest tools they bring to it is this model that they utilize, this tool that they utilize to say, okay, here's what 300 kids, how they ranked these career pathways, and then we try, to get them, and they only get to go to 2, but we try to get them into 2 that they have an interest in. So so it's a pretty big undertaking, and having the framework through Higher Paths is going to be a really big help.
I like the app idea because kids will like that. I think,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. And like I said, unfortunately, I'm sure that no matter what you do, kids are going to miss out on something that they might like to do. But that's also, kind of exciting. And hopefully, if they're curious enough about it, they would still find the opportunity to go and say, hey, I really wanted to go to yours, and I didn't get to, and they can still get that information. So that's the hope. Yeah. I think we'll take this opportunity to talk a little bit. Last night, Commissioner Gurman held a community meeting regarding the unauthorized encampments that we're seeing kind of pop up around the community. It was a very good meeting. Good job, Commissioner. Those are challenging conversations to have. Just a little bit of background on it. So the folks from the Sagebrush Homeowners Association had raised concerns that there were folks who were living in the riverbed, what used to be the river, right? The riverbed. And I don't know, this probably started 6 months ago that you guys first brought it?
They've been there for over a year. They moved in there about the time they started on the Main Street Bridge, so we're talking a year and a half ago.
Okay, so, but it was 6 or 8 months ago that you guys took it, started having the conversations?
Yeah, October, November of last year we started.
Yeah, so, of course, you have a group of people who says, we need to do something right now, and something has to happen. And when I was first approached about it, I said it will not be as easy as we might think, right? Number one, we don't even know whose property they're on, right? So there were a whole lot of things that had to be answered. We don't know whose property they're on. We don't know if there's anything to enforce. It seems like the answer is send the sheriff out and tell them they got to go. Well, as I said up front when Lance first talked to me about it, it won't be that easy. There's a lot that has to be done before we can come up with a solution. It's still not going to be easy, and I think it's important. The public is there. There's certainly people talking about this, but there's nobody really speaking to their concerns. And I think, as the organization that's dedicated to economic and community development, it's probably wise for us to at least explain a little bit, so maybe we can calm some of the frustrations that are out there. So when we've all heard the joke that, you go to the doctor and you say, doctor, it hurts when I do this, and the doctor says, well, don't do that. Right? Well, that solves that, and that is the problem I said I had. I said it hurt when I raised my arm, so don't raise my arm. But that isn't really what we want, right? We really want to know, why does it hurt when I do this, and how do we fix that, right? So that's one thing we have to understand. And then we say, trying to put this in terms that we can all relate to. So if I have an anthill that suddenly appears on my sidewalk in my house, right, at my house, I look at that and I don't want an anthill on my sidewalk, and I go into the garage and I say, what could I do to take care of the anthill? Well, I have a sledgehammer. Well, that is one way to address this. So I take the sledgehammer and I take it out to the anthill, and the anthill is gone. But I have other problems now, right? Because I took a sledgehammer to a problem that, as it turns out, wasn't a technical problem. It was an adaptive problem. It was a systemic problem. So I could get rid of the ants, which is what I wanted to do, but I also broke my concrete and created a hazard that people are going to trip now when they try to walk up to my house. So now I have more problems to fix than what my original problem was, which was an ant pile, okay? So when we talk about those things related to the human condition, which this is obviously a problem related to the human condition, right? We've all heard the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to the human condition. That is true. We are not the first community to deal with an adaptive problem like this. Technical problems are fun to solve. I like to do laundry because there's a process. There's a procedure I follow for that, and I get immediate gratification. I don't like to reorganize my kitchen cupboards because there's 30 cupboards, and there's at least 30 different ways I could organize this, and everything I organize one way is going to affect something I organize somewhere else, right? That's the difference between technical problem solving and adaptive problem solving, systemic problem solving. So every action creates a new challenge that we have to take on. There are not easy fixes. If there were easy fixes, there wouldn't be a problem. Many communities have already addressed this. They're already taking this on. Some things have worked, some things haven't worked. We don't need to try to recreate the wheel in dealing with this. We need to look at this from that systemic approach, from a holistic approach, and really determine if this, then what? And how do we solve that? That is challenging. That is challenging when you have folks like the homeowners in Sagebrush whose only problem is, it hurts when I do this. I just want the anthill gone. I don't care what else gets broken, right? And it's understandable that people feel that way. But as a community, we need to be mindful that it did not happen. Commissioner Gurman said last night, the problem didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight. That is very true. So we have to take a measured approach as a community. It's not that it shouldn't be addressed. It's that we have to address it appropriately and hopefully create a model that will work for other communities to look to and to solve it. The other thing I will tell you is the tomorrow problem of this is likely going to be far larger than the today problem of this. We have huge changes coming to the future of all of our country, of all of the world. We are going to see one of the largest shifts and displacements of workforce in our history in the near future. Shannon and I have been actively engaged in conversations and futures thinking about what happens as technology continues to advance. Amazon is building a computer that, right now in Indiana, that will be larger, will be capable of everything the human brain is capable of. They're building it today. It's underway. This is the future. The future is going to bring us more and more artificial intelligence advancements. That's going to displace more and more and more workers as we look to the future. So the idea that we already don't have appropriate housing for people, the fact that we already don't have mental health supports or addiction supports or social service supports of any kind, the fact that we already experience a shortage in those is only going to get magnified going into the future. So I would suggest as a community that we really consider that. The future is going to be far more challenging in regard to these specific challenges. I think this is just kind of our little precursor to, okay, maybe we better have this broader approach, because the problem probably is not limited to what's happening right now. It's probably a problem that continues to grow with time, and we need to be prepared for that. The other side of that is that it is very easy to say those people, and I use quote marks because that's how we typically refer to groups or to, people who aren't us, they're they, right? And I would, again, just caution us about when we look at those types of issues, they, if that's how we're referring to them, are also entitled to constitutional protections. They have protections as well. And so I would just hope that as a community we can take a breath. We can look at this from as many angles as we can possibly get at the table, and then we would seek to solve to the benefit of the entire community, and even the broader community. If we can come up with a solution that works, then hopefully we would be able to make that replicable so other communities could utilize the model as well. It's going to be a heavy lift. So,
Is the riverbed privately owned, publicly owned, or
I thought state owned it.
state of Kansas, and it's like an easement?
well, that depends on who you ask, because Commissioner Schultz has had done some of the research on it. Representative Lewis has, in an attempt to, again, take a technical approach, has proposed legislation that he would take to the state legislature that would allow communities to enforce removal, if you will, of folks and items if they choose, basically, giving them the option to do that. A couple of things were brought up last night that I think help to illustrate the challenge, right? So there were a couple of people who read the proposed bill and said, this makes it sound like if I want to go down there and four-wheel in the river, I also can't do that. Right. This is what we're, again, you try to solve one problem and then there's unintended consequences, right? So ownership is one challenge, enforcement is another challenge, and then again, there's legal precedent that folks who don't have, access to housing are still entitled to shelter of some kind. And so if I to shelter myself, build a structure out of, I put up a tent, or I build a structure out of crates, or I do whatever I do, am I entitled to that shelter that I've created for myself because shelter wasn't readily available to me? Yeah, there's legal precedent that says, yeah, I have a right to protect myself from the elements. So there's no easy answer. There's a lot of it is very easy to solve technical problems. I love when the community members come to our office and say, hey, here's my problem, and I say, whew, technical problem, and we have the solution. Here's your toolbox. Unfortunately, this is not one of those problems. This is an adaptive issue and a systemic issue. So every action we take will likely create another avenue that we have to look at. So again, if my finger hurts, I don't just cut my finger off and assume that is going to solve the root cause of that. This is a much broader challenge than that. And I applaud Commissioner Gurman for getting getting some folks in that room to start that conversation. We have social services providers who have been dealing with this for years. they've been hyper aware of it. They've been providing blankets and food and offering mental health services and offering rehoming services. Like, there's plenty of work that's being done. The resource pool is very shallow. We don't have a lot of resources to take. The barriers are many. To the point of some of the social services organizations last night, they said, no, we can help. We have housing vouchers, for instance. But we take those housing vouchers to a landlord who has an apartment opening, and our voucher says we can pay $500 a month for this apartment, but the landlord can get $900 for that apartment going to the general public. Why would they accept my housing voucher client when they've got 10 clients willing to pay $900? So it will not be easy. It will be a heavy lift. It will require a focused, organized approach in order to solve it. And in the end, it may still not be solved to everybody's satisfaction. So I would just urge people to be patient, to be mindful, to be engaged, and to bring a holistic view to the challenge. I do understand. There's a reason why the phrase NIMBY has been around in community development for decades. Not in my backyard, right? Everybody says, well, there should be a solution to that. Oh, but not here. Don't do it here where I can see it, right? Or there ought to be a law. There ought to be a law. And the follow-up to that, there ought to be a lawyer, right? So as soon as you legislate, you open up the door on the other side of that you now have to deal with. So the more prepared we can be, the more holistic we can look at this issue, the better chance we have of creating a solution that actually works for the community and solves the problem.
That is so well said, and I would just like to add that I was thrilled with the participation that we had last night. I really expected maybe 20 people. There were 45. It was an invitation only because we did want to keep it small, and this was just to start the conversation. I started off by saying, basically, let's all get along here. Don't say, well, you shouldn't, try to kick these people out because you don't want them devaluing your property, or we don't want you, doing whatever. Nobody was attacking anyone. Everyone was there. Well, maybe not everybody. The majority, I think, were there with a solution in mind. We want to do something. So I'm encouraged. I feel like this is something that we can do and be pioneers in Southwest Kansas with, coming up with a solution. Everybody's like, well, I know about this and I know about that. And you're just bringing everybody to the table who can help to, and like Lana said, there's not going to be a solution that works 100% for everybody, but we can at least get the best solution that is possible for us to come up with and continue to work on that. And I think that just having compassion for our neighbors and realizing that these people are our neighbors just like the guy that owns the house next door. And how do we address this issue? I've spent some time with Shruti, who is the Finney County Health Director, and she's got some amazing ideas. This woman is brilliant. Actually, she was trained in India as a doctor. But that doesn't translate to being a doctor in the United States. So we're very fortunate to have her where we do. But she's got some really good ideas, and she has been kind of working toward that. But she's told me that they already have systems among these humanitarian organizations, like, we can't handle this, so we send you over there, and this goes over here, and I said, is that written anywhere? And they were like, no. And so that's my first order of business, is let's kind of get this figured out, like where do you send people and what do you do? And that way, when people ask us, what can I do about this? We'll have a path for them. So I think that's just the beginning. I think this could be really huge. There are communities that have done huge things with regard to homeless living facilities, and that's really the biggest challenge. Food is another, but the community has always, been pretty giving with regard to that. I think that, we should definitely continue that. But the housing situation is going to be another challenge, and I am so thankful that we have, people with heart in Finney County, and I look forward to moving forward with this project, and would encourage anybody in the public, if you want to get involved, please reach out.
And I want to thank Vicki for putting that meeting together. Really, it was the first step. A lot of great comments. I mean, sometimes you have this idea, this is the solution, and somebody say, oh no, they tried that someplace else, and this is what happened, and oh. So getting all those ideas together was great. So it's going to be a long, hard process.
Yes,
I know that.
it is. Yes, it is.
But thanks for everybody for helping with that.
But let's don't take sledgehammers to ant piles.
Right.
That's all I have for you, unless you have any questions for me.
Well, the first thing you had on your list was health or medical services. I know that you were starting to work with the hospital 6-8 months ago or whatever. Is that what you're talking about on that?
No, this is actually a private medical medical service provider that has been to the community, looking to expand into the community. Yeah, they provide a very specific medical service that they'd like to bring to the community. So we're working with them on locations that would work for them. Excuse me. In our conversations with the hospital, Danielle, one of the assistant city managers, and myself, we meet with the hospital CEO monthly, and we started that. We asked for that just because our hospital is private. It's in a lot of communities. It's a publicly funded hospital, so they're at the table for all of the conversations. When the county, the city, and all the other taxing entities get together. In this case, again, our hospital is private. So Danielle and I had started several months ago meeting with Twyla Lee, who is the CEO of the hospital here, just so that we have that connection point, and if there are problems that they're experiencing that we can help to solve, and vice versa. If there are things that we're doing that are going to impact the hospital, we want to make sure they're aware of that too. Those conversations have been tremendously valuable, and we just had one of those meetings earlier this week, and I will just say one of the things that came out of that was a conversation about the charitable care, which has kind of always been one of those measures of how is healthcare doing, and how is the community as a whole doing, and not, when I started in this position, which was 15 years ago this month, actually, Scott Taylor was still the CEO of the hospital, and I clearly remember him telling me the year that they went over $2 million in charitable care, meaning that they provided $2 million worth of care that was not going to be reimbursed, was not going to be paid by any source. Last year, that number was $22 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of things, a lot of factors, right? And certainly we would need to look at a lot of data points to fully understand that. Part of that could just be, they may have provided charitable care to the same number of patients, but the costs are just so much more per patient now it's this much. Or it could be that they provided charitable care to this many more patients. And both of those have consequences, but they're not the same consequences, right? So we would certainly need to look at some additional data points to fully appreciate. However, the more concerning piece of that is that we are on pace to be nearly double that this year. in charitable care. So obviously, this is something that, as a community, we need to be looking at on a broader scale. The other challenge that they mentioned, because I did bring up the unauthorized encampment challenge, and I, one of the things that I brought up to Commissioner Gurman right away when she brought that up was, are our schools being impacted by this? Are there school-age children engaged in this? Is the health department engaged? Is the hospital being impacted by this? All of these service providers, how are they being impacted? Because it's important to have those items addressed as well. And they had not put it together that there may be a correlation. However, now that, now when we brought it up to them, she said, that could explain why we're seeing an influx of folks who are showing up around meal times at the emergency department who don't actually have an emergent health condition, but it's mealtime, and maybe there's an opportunity to get a meal. So, again, I think those conversations with the healthcare side have been very beneficial, and we certainly intend to continue down that path, as I think there's some really important ways that we can work together to address not only this challenge, but other healthcare related challenges that are not, we do know that there's a lot of public discussion about healthcare, and I think everybody would agree there are absolutely challenges related to healthcare. It is not just us; it's happening everywhere, and it's a real concern for folks. So,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Lana, and Vicki, thank you for weighing in on this issue. It's an issue that's going to get worse, I think, before it gets better, so. Okay, next up, Steve Cottrell, Special Projects Director.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's Global Beatles Day. Yeah,
Beatles?
Beatles.
The Beatles or the Bugs?
The band.
The band.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Okay.
It's Day of the Seafarer. Backyard safety check. Make sure your backyards are safe for your grandkids.
Okay.
It's Cheese Day. There's Islamic New Year. And my favorite, Catfish Day.
What kind of cheese?
Goats.
Goat cheese day. I'll participate.
Okay, thank you. All right, on the industrial side, we did not get any RFPs from Commerce in June, so quiet month for them. Did review the preliminary infrastructure plans for Northwest Industrial Park, the roads, water, and sewer. City Commission on June 3rd passed an ordinance on the Sports of the World project plan amendment, vacated street easements in the vicinity of Grace Bible Church, rezoned a portion of Prairie View Acres from R1 PUD and zero lot line to just an R1 PUD, adopted an ordinance related to maintenance of private property, approved a purchase agreement with Snyder Radio for 145 South Farmland Road. Approved a purchase agreement for 4.5 acres on North Taylor addition from American Warrior for an electric substation, and approved the final plat of the Grace Bible Church subdivision. On the 17th, they amended the Star Bond agreement and plan and submitted a request to the FAA for designing the reconstruction of Taxiway A. County Commission on the 2nd held a budget workshop. On the 16th, adopted a resolution appointing an interim county appraiser. Commercial side, I worked on Star Bond project and district plans. In residential, I continued working on the urban growth map, which now shows 17,319 units. So, get busy. That's all I got.
for Steve. Thank you, sir.
Hey, I do have one question, Steve. What's the purpose of the Snyder radio?
I have no idea.
You don't know? Okay.
I thought it was utilities expansion.
It could also be a situation of preserving that area for industrial use as opposed to somebody buying it and turning it into a mobile home park or some other residential use.
All right, thank you.
Kind of like the quick shop.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Next up, Scott Ost, Communications Director.
Good morning.
Steve.
The website and Twix were down slightly this month. Facebook was up about 20%. The top thing that people looked at was the Red Dog Children's Museum story about a grant they received from the Department of Commerce, I think, Tourism Attraction Development Grant. And other things included like summer volleyball camps, summer food programs. There were a lot of state track posts that I reshared from the track meet in late May. Crystal Apple nominees, and I guess there was a Pride Fest. Was it last weekend?
Yeah.
2025 here in Garden City. So that's about it. Everything was pretty boilerplate this time.
Has anybody told you about the state track meet in Wichita? They were ahead of schedule all week long. Amazing. Amazing. They had workers everywhere.
That's not normal.
No.
And Holcomb did very well.
Yeah, they did.
Yes. And my granddaughter did very well.
Oh,
That's great.
That's what the motto said.
But it was amazing, man. They didn't sit around nowhere.
It's good. That's what you like to see. Okay, thank you, Scott. Next up, Grant Lindenberger, Business Development.
Good morning.
I have client 11241. So this is the same thing last month, and they're telling us that they are not going to move forward, but we still might try to keep reaching out to them and have a conversation to see if we can maybe keep them going with their business plan. Client 1254. This client I helped with applying for an EIN so they can import and export food products. Client 425-1, still waiting to hear back what bank they want to finance with. Client 525-03, I'm currently reviewing this client's business plan. And then client 6251, this client has an existing business in Montana. They're looking to open a second location here. They're struggling to find a location that meets their needs. It's been hard for them to establish contact with some of the building owners. So they would like to open and be operational by the end of August, but they plan to make a final decision here by like July 9th. And then we've got upcoming events every Tuesday in July at Makerspace. There will be WISE, which is Women, Innovation, Skills, and Entrepreneurship. I will be there speaking for different individual business plan purposes for each Tuesday. So it's a good time to go and check that out for any entrepreneur. And that's what I've got for you. And Shannon's got more info on the whole scope of WISE if you want to know more about that.
So this Montana business,
Yeah.
potentially 2 sites here? Is that what that says?
No.
Okay.
She has a business in Montana.
This would be the
She's
second.
one of us.
Okay, gotcha.
Here in Garden. So,
Well, getting close to decision day on
Yeah.
that one, huh? Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. We have locations,
there was some
potential
line,
locations for them?
but it's either doesn't really fit what she wants or she can't get a conversation started.
Okay. Well, keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Next up, Shannon Dick, Director of Analytics.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, to talk about what Graham was saying is that WISE program that's at the Makerspace, it's from a Women of Purpose grant. And what the point is to help give tools to women who are interested in getting into their own business. So like Grant said, it's going to be every Tuesday evening in July for an hour and a half or so. It'll be, each of those nights will be 3 parts. One part will be talking with Grant, who's going to help the process of making a business plan, doing all those things that you need to establish a business. One part is going to be talking with successful women entrepreneurs in the community, and Janet Dole's going to be talking at one of those nights about her journey in that. And the third part is learning about different aspects of the makerspace, so that then those women can learn how to use those things, and then they'll latch on by to one thing that they really want to, woodworking or whatever those are. And so through that whole process, they get the whole entrepreneur kind of thing. At the end of that, we're offering those women space at the hub, because Great Plains Makerspace has a booth at the hub downtown to sell products. So they'll be able to have access to whatever they want to make, they can do it there. And then we're also giving them 6 months of free membership, so that they have time to be able to use whatever tools that they learn, get the business plan going, all that kind of stuff, and just try out that sort of thing. So really, we're really excited about that. We have a couple of more spots up. We've actually filled up faster than we thought. And it is coming up like within a week. So if you do know of any women that are interested in participating, we're taking all ages. We've had interest from younger women to ones that are professionals already that are looking at kind of branching out and doing some of those hobby kind of businesses. So get a hold of me if you know anybody who's interested in that sort of thing. No cost to anybody. So yeah, so a really neat program coming on. We're really excited about Janet being one of the speakers. Just talk about her journey as a goldsmith. So good. It's a good thing. So okay. What I'm going to be talking about today is the East Regional Shopping Area. This kind of came up as a review of the Star Bond. The Department of Commerce was looking at this. And really before, when we were talking about our retail economy, we've really been using just Shulman Crossing, because that was something that we could track in Placer with our cell phone tracking software. However, we need to expand that when we're talking about the Star Bond District and what that all encompasses as we measure that opening up and the change in amounts of people coming into town. So we went in and I had to make a request for them to make this boundary. So this is what I didn't name this is just Placer. When I gave them the area, they did this, and they named this area East Regional Shopping Area, which generic, but it works. So this includes everything that's in Phase 1 of the Star Bond, so that's kind of why it includes, sorry, people on the internet. This includes everything, including the triangle pit down here for the community college, because that's part of Star Bond. There's no retail going on here, and there's not going to be any retail. But so some of these boundaries goes all the way down to the triangle thing here. It includes Parrot Cove. It includes Old Chicago. It includes the refinery area, all of Shulman Crossing, but also Home Depot, Walmart, Sam's Club, Target, which is outside of that Shulman Crossing before. What's nice though about this boundary is this more lines up when we're talking about our shopping compared to other regional shopping areas, because usually when we look at other cities, when they're talking about their shopping district, they usually do include a Target and a Walmart and a Sam's and Home Depot and that kind of stuff. And so it kind of gives us a little bit more apples to apples kind of thing. So it's nice to have this boundary to look at just to see how our trends are doing. And then we can use that to compare it to other communities, especially when we're talking about recruiting more and then expanding our retail. So it's nice to have this all on hand. It just took a little bit of extra work to have Placer, because this area is too big for me to do it. I have to make a request for Placer to make that boundary for me. So that's why we did it. So anyway, if we go look all the way back, The furthest back I can get data right now is 2018. So we can just look at the trends of how things are going in a bunch of different ways from 2018 up to 2024. So in 2024, we had 7.1 million visitors to that area, which is up 9% from 2018. We had 400,000 individual people who visited that, which made up that 7 million visits, which is up 12.9. Now, before you go to the next slide, this is your stats lesson for the day, or the stats, just keep in mind this in your life kind of thing. See the shape of those two lines, especially the light blue line. The light blue line you would consider basically a straight line, right? The top one, you definitely see the little COVID dip down. Now, if I make a graph of those two lines and I let Excel choose the scale. Okay, now go to the next one. This is the exact same data. This is the exact same data. The only difference is on our scale, our Y scale, the vertical, this right here goes to 0, and then up, if we go over, let's go to the next slide. It goes from here to here. So it zooms in. This you would almost say is the exact same thing, it's just in a different location, right? The only thing that's different between that, right, the data is the exact same. The only thing that's different between that and that previous is just the scaling of your graphs. So keep that in mind when you're looking at graphs. Look at what that scale is doing, because that seems like it paints a completely different picture than the first one. Same data, and it's still both, there's still positive change, but you didn't see in that light blue line, you didn't see that how much it matches the other one, just because of the scaling. I've never seen something like come out like that perfectly. So sorry, it was one of my. This is
a teaching moment.
Right. This is fun kind of thing, right? So yeah. So anyway,
This will go in your textbook.
Right. So you do see that we did see even the number of visitors have that little COVID dump, but I mean we have a pretty straight line, increasing line. Going from 2018 to 2024, if you just take out that COVID chunk and you just draw straight, then we have a pretty steady increasing line. The other thing that's interesting, I think we go to the next slide. No, it's from before. If we look at that line for, oh no, it's in this couple stuff. I'll take a second. One thing that's also interesting, this is just looking at the people from outside of Finney County. So we've got over in 2024, we had 2.8, almost 2.9 million visitors from outside of Finney County, which is up 10% since 2018, and that was made up by 364,000 people that weren't from Garden City or Holcomb or the rural area in Finney County. So a large amount of people coming to visit this shopping area. Okay. So here's, if we just go look and break it down by the cities. And this is the number of visits, again, so this is, you can visit the shopping area once a day for 365 days a year. So this is how many we had. 4 million people from, or almost 4 million, 3.9 million visitors from Garden City, and that's an increase of 7.7% from 2018 to 2024.
And just for clarification, Shannon, for terms of how we're referring, these are visits, not visitors.
Visitors.
Right.
Right. So this is how many times people from Garden City went to this shopping area, but it only gets counts once a day. If you went to 4 different places, that only counts 1 count per day. So if you went there every day, that would be 365 visits a year. The interesting number, about 7.7% growth from 2018 to 2024. If you divide out that over the 6 years we have it, that's a 1.28% growth since 2018. I don't know if you know what that number is, but when we've been talking with everybody about the growth of Garden City, historically and in the future, what we are projecting a 1.28% growth.
In population.
So when we're talking about the census, when we've been talking about all these people, we've been saying we've been growing 1.28% per year. No. You're actually losing population. The census actually said we lost population. Here's another one that lines up exactly 1.28%. Exactly. It doesn't have to do with, I mean, it's people. but it's shopping trips, and it's growing at 1.28%. So another just thing that's really interesting that just kind of backs up again all the other things that we've been seeing. So what I'm going to be doing in the next couple of sections is zooming in. So go back once. So Garden City has a bunch of visits. We outpace everybody else in the state. So now I'm going to zoom into this area right here. So go there. Okay, so now we can see that's Holcomb's line. They had 300,000 visits, up 20%. Dodge City's line had 277,000 visits, up 40% since 2018. Ulysses, 200,000, up 11%. Lakin up 15%. Scott City's up 15%. Liberal's up 7%. Liberal is this line here. What's interesting is Dodge has really started to pick up how many visits that they've been coming in, which is good. That's showing that we have a more capture of a regular market. I mean, Dodge City community has been growing a little bit, but it's not growing in that path. That really is showing that we're actually capturing more of those people coming more often. So then we zoom in again. Down there we have Sublet, which is really interesting. Sublet's participation in our retail out on the east side has increased 55%. Cimarron's up 22%. Syracuse is about even a little bit down, 2.6. Deerfield is up 73%. There's been a lot of growth in Deerfield. And then there's 4 together: Ingalls, Satana, Hugoton, Leota. Most of those are slightly down. Leota's up a little bit. And then we zoom in again, down a little bit. Lamar is actually up 42% over the last 6 years. Colby's up 12%. Hayes is up 70%. Diamond's way up 60%. I mean, these are small numbers, 19,000 visits, but I mean, we're seeming to be slowly getting more of those people. Mead is down a lot, so that's interesting. I don't know much about Mead. I don't know if that's a population loss or if that's actually they're going somewhere else to shop. I need to go kind of dive into Mead and see why they're down 40%. But Great Bend's about flat. And then we just look at the number of visitors, so individual people that are coming in. We have a graph here. I just highlighted Guard, Dodge, Liberal, Ulysses is a great line that's kind of above everybody else. And then I just made a chart if you want to look at each of those, because we don't need to look at a whole bunch more charts. So there's a table. So interesting stuff. Again, we always talk about having 3 million visitors to Garden City for retail, and we do have that. That's Shulman Crossing. But if we look at that bigger, when we start to include Walmart and Target and Sam's and Home Depot and stuff like that, I mean, our reach is 7 million plus per year in our community. So good stuff. Really, really interesting. I'm glad we did that. It'll be really interesting when the Sports of the World gets going, because again, they said that they're projecting 1 million visitors a year to that. But at the same time, we're already blowing way past the original projection in the first place for the retail. So it'll be interesting to see how these numbers change and starting to track it now. So when we do have the opening, we can start to measure that actual impact of that project to see specifically how many people from out of the area are coming in. So,
Could you go back to that one slide that shows the, keep going slowly. Okay, right there.
yeah.
Those are all smaller communities right around Garden City, but they all had less visits. What, do we attribute to anything to that, or?
Less population?
What do you mean? Yeah,
Well,
so,
there's -6.5, minus.
oh, why are they going down?
Yeah.
We would have to say, well, we'll say Syracuse is a wash, so we'll say that's about the same. So, but Ingalls, I've looked at the number, and you don't see it here, you look at the visitors, so the individual people, the number of individual people in Ingalls, you can't, well, actually, go to one more slide here. Oh, I don't have the, but we do see just the number of people. Right now, in 2024, we had 982. But the individual people has gone down, so that might be just a population decline of that community. That's making up that decrease in visits. So when we talk about visits, there's a couple of things. One is your population change. 2 is where are you going to shop? Are you going to Garden City? Are you going to Dodge? Are you going to Wichita? And then 3 is how frequently are you going to those different places to shop? I would think with Ingalls, since it's close. It's probably not a loss of them going somewhere else to shop. That decrease probably is a individual population. The bigger question to me is to look at the difference between Sublet and Satana. If we go back, and so at the same time, if you look at Sublette, which is way up here, and Satanta, which is here, if we look back in 2018, they were really close. We were into 60 to 70,000 visits. Since that time, Satanta is basically flat, where Sublette has really taken off. That's, to me, I'd go in and say, so, I mean, they are growing as a population, but really, have we really made that move where Sublette is just coming here by default and not going, because, I mean, Sublette's in a location that's really nice for them to choose Garden or Dodge or Liberal to go shopping. They're centrally located between the three of us. To me, it looks like I don't think there's been a 50% growth in population there. It's probably they've just decided to more regularly come to Garden City versus going to Dodge or Liberal for shopping. So, interesting stuff. I mean, a whole bunch of questions that just opens up. But
I'd be curious on the number of visits, how that's changed for out of state.
I have that data in here. I didn't put it here, but yeah. So if we're talking about the number of visits, it's about 90% of the visits, out of state. I only did it outside of 100 miles, which we can say is basically the same thing. Number of visits, 10% of our visits, so you can do that multiple times a year, are from outside of 100 miles, so you can basically say out of state. And that is increasing. And then if we talk about visitors, the individual people, we have 55% of the visitors in 2018 were from 100 miles away. Now, 45% were from 100 miles away. Now it's up to 55% are from 100 miles away. So we are seeing that increase in, the overall number is going up, but as the overall number going up, there's even a bigger part of that being made up by people from outside of the 100-mile range. And then the whole point of the Star Bond is, okay, when that opens up, when we have that attraction, we want to see that number even get larger, because that's bringing in outside dollars from not just Kansas, but the whole state to our area. So, yeah, I have actually tracked that data, just pulled it as well. Yeah.
So, I know earlier years you talked about going and through parking lots and you were looking at license plates. Today you're talking about cell phones.
Yep.
And I'm totally ignorant here, but I mean, I'll get a number coming on my phone. It may be from New York, find out they're my new next door neighbor. So, for people, it depends where they got their phones. How does that?
No, the system accommodates for that. Shannon can explain that.
Yeah, so that is looking, so they literally do track where your cell phone is living in. And this is why we like it for population counts.
Okay.
Because they are looking at where those cell phones live at night, where they stay at night. They also are tracking, this company, Placer, is tracking where you go to work during work hours. So it establishes where you are living at, where that cell phone, my cell phone right there, it knows I sleep at my home. It knows that I come to our office, and then it knows where I go between the day. And it parses out where this person is living, where this person is working, and then where they're visiting.
So where does this finally come into the invasions of privacy?
It's not your individual phone. So it's not looking at your phone and where your phone goes. It's doing counts by space. So where that phone is pinging, but not the phone, and not who's taking the phone to one place or another.
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm sure it doesn't.
And they won't, even if they get down to, they'll be like, if you have less than 50 people a day at a certain spot, it won't even give you results. Like,
Right.
so, Placer knows, so take it up with him, but we're pulling the useful stuff out of it. But they'll say, even if there's some events or some places where we don't get enough, they won't even show you the data where people are from. And then when they say when I get the data about where those people are, it's by zip code. So I know that it's people from 674-6, but I don't know that it's from a specific location. However, they do know where that phone is there, so. I mean, you just
don't know
start data overlay.
who has that.
When has big data ever betrayed us?
We get asked that question a lot from people, though. So, and some of that is just how we refer to it, right? When we say, oh, we're using cell phone tracking, obviously that has a tendency to concern folks, but it's not your cell phone that we're tracking. It is a number of cell phones that are residing in this location at this time, or that are visiting this location at this time. So,
But with all the technology that's come along, they can.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
They can.
well, right, but we don't, but the tool we're using is not to give us individualized information. And we don't even get that information. We only get this gross amount of information, not this detailed amount of information. Yeah.
This phone's been spending a lot of time at this house here.
Anybody know why they're over there? Yeah.
So, totally unrelated question, but just came to my mind there, but it used to be, we said, okay, something comes to town, an event or whatever, and again, these people come to town, they spend money, it's really worth 7 times that. But my question is, where so much of it's franchised today, and it's kind of, I can remember when Walmart came in here, they talked Fidelity in to come out and be their bank. All they were doing was counting it and went immediately to Arkansas. So really, is that factor still really there as far
Yes,
as
you're talking about 2 different versions of, quote, money. There's physical money. To your point, they collect the cash, they put it in the bank, and then they sweep it overnight and send it off to Arkansas, or in this case, if you're talking about Walmart, right? So that's the physical money that became digital money and got sent somewhere else. But when we're talking about the spend of dollars, that hasn't been impacted greatly by that, because the way you get spend from the dollars is the indirect, the direct, and the induced. So you still have employees working at Walmart who are getting paid to work at Walmart, if we're using Walmart as the example, right? Those employees live, work, play in the community. So the money they're being paid as a result of the job that was created because the store was built here, that money is still getting spent within the community. They're spending that money to pay their rent. So a landlord got money, they're paying it to their utilities, so the city and Black Hills and whoever else got money. They're using it to go out to dinner, so a restaurant that they frequented got money. They're using it to buy groceries, they're using
How
it
many of those are franchises?
Again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The money is being spent here. The jobs exist here. Where your point would be acceptable, would actually impact the spend of dollars, is if the money were going to somewhere there was no local job creation tied to it. So as long as there is local work that is being recompensed as a result of those dollars and that business existing in the community, there is the 7-fold spend. And the 7-fold spend, people have questioned, is it 7, is it 12? You can make whatever case you want there, but I think still the general rule of thumb is 7. It's 7 times. So it doesn't matter as long as somebody is getting paid locally, as long as there is an indirect, an induced, or a direct job that is tied to that industry, that business existing within the community. Yes, the spend still matters. So you can't confuse the physical dollar that turns into a digital dollar. You can't confuse that with the spend factor. They are 2 completely different items.
Any more questions for Shannon?
Great question.
I do have a question. Shannon, I'm on the library board, and we had a meeting this week, and Pam was telling me that you have assisted them with some counts using Placer, but you didn't feel that it was accurate. Is that kind of a one-off, or is there?
So we're looking at this more. So the issue is, and we've seen this with updates, is we're really in the case of this, it's kind of a good problem. We're seeing that they're undercounting in some cases. And we've seen this with some of the library events. We saw this with, I don't think it was Art in the Park. Maybe it was Art in the Park. And then we also like the Community Cultural Day. It's these events that are free to go to, that have a high proportion of a refugee and migrant population, that also seem to have targeted kid-centric things. When we get that combination, it seems that our placer count is undercounting. And it's been slightly undercounting, but it seems like every single update they do, it seems to be diverging from the true count. Because like with the library, we have the counters, so we're talking about like summer reading kickoff, right? And so there's counters when they do the summer reading kickoff, they go through the library and then they go do their things and then we go. So there's a good count to that they have there. Placer is counting at about half of what that ticker was of the people going in. And so the issues are, and so I brought it up with Placer. And so one of the things is they are adamant that they don't track kids' cell phones. That's one thing they say. We purposely don't track kids' cell phones. I say to them, how do you know it's a kid's cell phone when I gave my kid my old cell phone? They won't even have it. They say, we do not. And I'm sure that's from a legal perspective. So, but they say they don't track kids' cell phones. At the same time, when we have a refugee and migrant population that probably has a slower adoption of cell phones, we probably are getting a little bit less people there. The third issue that I think is the reason why we're starting to see a big divergence of this in our placer for these types of foods, because our restaurant numbers seem to come out right. Everything else comes out. It's just this subgroup of things. They base how many people are in an area, because they have to do some estimation because of the kids, based on census counts. And when we had the last census in our refugee and our migrant population, we were really talking about like Afghan refugees and some others that had low amounts of kids that were within in their specific census tract. Now we're having Haitians and populations like that moving in that have much more kids, but they're still basing that off of the old ratio of kids to adults. Even though now, we're going like one parent to one kid, now one parent to like 4 kids. So now that we have that, we have a library that can track each of these people, but Placer is still with this population in this location, still estimating, I think what the issue is off of those old estimation of kids per person in this area. And it's really diverging as we have that shift of population, which we know is happening. We can see that from Tyson and just looking at the community. They're behind it, and that might not get changed until a new update with the census, like a real update, not these estimates that are just always wrong. A real update in 2030, but not that the real updates really are right either, but they're at least closer. So I actually just got the whole set of counter data that the library has for 3 years, daily data that we're working with Placer to say, okay, where are we starting to see this divergence? And because the thing is, I know Placer's not going to do some sort of change that's really going to just affect like us and Dodge and Liberal, maybe North Platte, something like that. But if we know how we can adjust these events, the counts that we get for these events, then we can still use their general counts. And then when we have these events that are that really go in that free refugee, migrant, and have a lot of kids, we can take some scaling factor and say, okay, Placer said this, but really we know after doing some digging, we really need to time this by 1.4 or something like that, and to get really the true number. So that's what's going on. When we're looking at all the other data, Placer seems like it's still hitting right on track. And then in the end, for us, when we're talking about 7 million visitors, if we are missing, and Placer is actually missing, we're not hitting 7 million, we're hitting 10 million or something like that. The only thing we're doing is, we have really good numbers, and if it is wrong, we should even have better numbers. It's not one of those things where we'll be overinflating. If people are trying to estimate how many, like we have a new restaurant coming in and say, well, how many visitors should we expect? We won't be estimating high if there's an error, we'd be estimating low, which is good because then they'll just flow through their stuff. So,
awesome.
So we'll work on it. It's actually spent a lot of time yesterday going through the whole stuff with Placer. Had some calls and stuff like that. And they're really interested because we're a different type of community than most of the communities that use Placer. We're just racially diverse and not a metro. So.
But that goes back partially to Sam's question, right? Because it's having to make assumptions.
Right.
Instead of specifically looking at each phone, it's making assumptions based on the number of phones that are there. So that it's actually also a positive that, no, we're not actually tracking your individual fund.
Well, and I think, you know, what just occurred to me is if they were invading our privacy, we'd probably have a more accurate census count.
I think there's something to that. I have a feeling that a cell phone estimation process is better than an actual count because there are people that don't want to be counted, but they still have cell phones.
Yep.
And I want to thank you, Shannon, for always assisting everybody, you know. The library appreciates it, and I do too.
Even the people in the river have something.
I bet, yeah. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, we're moving on, new business. Consideration of the new FCEDC.
Good job. All right, so just a little background. You guys remember that a couple of years ago, we were approached by the Small Business Development Center of Kansas to take on a role of providing SBDC services through a joint position, hence grant. So that was, when we originally went into that agreement, they were paying $35,000 as part of those contract services. They reimbursed us $35,000 a year that we were able to apply towards the salary for our business development position. Their funding got modified this year. The legislature did away with funding to the K-State 105 venture, which was a large part of the funding that went to the Kansas Small Business Development Center. At the same time, they had federal cuts as a result of some of the shifting in priorities away from business startups and small business supports. So they reached out and said they were not going to be able to do the full $35,000 that we had originally signed a contract for, but that they would be able to do $10,000 a year instead of the $35,000 a year. Obviously, we said, you know, we'll certainly look at that as an option, but if we're going to accept a cut of that magnitude, the scope of our work will have to be changed accordingly. When we first signed the agreement for the $35,000, we had multiple counties that we were responsible for serving because we were getting that $35,000. So SBDC came back and said, yeah, you would only be expected to serve, you know, the Finney County clients. If clients from outside of Finney County sign up through the system, we would refer them to one of our other, you know, actual SBDC funded centers, and we wouldn't expect you to cover that anymore. There are still some things in the agreement that you all have, and I think, I'm sorry, Ron, I don't know, you and I didn't get a copy of it, but you can probably look over it at Dave's with him. There's just still some things in the metrics there that I'm not 100% supportive of, and I think we should negotiate further on those, because I think it's still expecting too much of Grant's time and efforts to be focused on this for only $10,000 in reward. Additionally, we do know that many of our clients, we're not waiting for business clients to show up through the SBDC portal. We have many, many people who just come to us because they know that we help start businesses, and then we actually refer them to the SBDC. So we create them, you know, their client as an SBDC client. So, you know, I think it is, obviously it is up to the board if you want us to continue to pursue an agreement that does work for everybody, knowing that, you know, that the funding will be $10,000 a year versus the $35,000 we had previously. From our standpoint, it's not not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, we don't like to lose funding. However, Grant's position, when we created that position, was really to have dual focus, which was small business development, but also workforce development. So, from our standpoint, if we modify where his efforts and where his focus and time is spent, I would argue that both of those are at least equally important, so it's not like he's going to be bored for any amount of time. We've got plenty of time to focus on both of those concerns. So I guess what we would ask of you is, today would be just a consensus that yes, you would like us to to continue down a path of getting the metrics to where we feel comfortable as a team that yes, those are the appropriate metrics to use for this, and that we judge that would be worth the $10,000 that you're offering to pay us. The contract date is supposed to start July 1st, so we just would need a consensus from you all that yes, pursue this, and so long as you get the metrics to where you feel comfortable as a staff, then we can sign that agreement.
And staff recommendation?
Yeah, we have plenty of other ways to keep Grant busy in his position, so I have no issue. So long as we're able to get that scope of work, their expectation of what they're going to get for the $10,000 investment, so long as we get that to the numbers that we judge are appropriate. Obviously, we'd like to continue the partnership. We don't. I hate that SBDC has lost a significant amount of funding. Beyond that, the Kansas Department of Commerce has now started their own small business side. So we talk all the time about duplication of services and those kind of challenges. And here we are trying to make the same dollar do lots and lots of work. So there's certainly challenges there for them. The tools, the tools right now that the Small Business Development Center is able to offer as far as the training programs, the business planning tools, those types of things, right now, those are still very good tools. Now, long term, they may not be that valuable, because if they don't have funding, they can't continue to update those tools and those resources. So we may change our mind at some point, but right now, I would say that those tools are still valuable enough that we'd be willing to continue the partnership, even though we're reducing the scale of it. Again, so long as we can get to a point where staff feels comfortable that the reward is worth the effort. So what we would ask, again, is that you, as a board, either direct us to continue towards the path of reaching an agreement on this, or say, no, it's not worth it for $10,000. We would recommend that you allow us to continue negotiating through and see if we can find a solution. It's a year-long contract.
Do you need a motion today or just consensus, you said?
What about his salary? Is his salary because the funding for him?
Are we going to cut him by $25,000?
What I'm trying to say.
Well, don't get all choked up about it, Dave. Yeah. Well, we don't discuss personal matters in a public meeting. We do have the budget. We do have the budget in other areas. As you guys are well aware, our budget is designed around our primary goals, and workforce development and small business development are both part of our primary goals. So it would require a shift of budget allocation, but certainly nothing that staff hasn't addressed in the past. We would bring all of those solutions to you.
Further discussion?
No, I'm comfortable with it.
So we make a motion to...
Don't need formal action, just need a consensus to continue moving forward, and if we're able to find a solution, you're okay with us getting that contract in place?
Consensus?
Yes.
I agree.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for business.
Of course not, we never have a
You guys are too efficient.
Upcoming events. And we're moving along now.
July 4th, yay.
Yay. Okay, future meeting dates, July 23rd. Everybody's okay with that? That's our fourth, is that the fourth Wednesday? Is there a need for executive session?
There is. 15 minutes should be
15
plenty.
minutes.
It's yours.
Okay, I hear a motion to go into executive session for 15 minutes.
I so move.
Moved and
Go ahead.
Second.
seconded. Okay, moved and seconded.
Janet and Sam, is that who's taking that one? Okay.
We'll fight over it.
Yeah, right?
Okay, we'll adjourn the regular session meeting.
All in
Go into
favor.
executive
You gotta say
session.
all in favor.
All in
All
favor?
those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
We do not
Thanks,
anticipate any
everybody.
action.
Good job.
Sublette, big move on Sublette, maybe all those businesses are on this side.